Some of these stories that I wrote when I was in the Vermont MFA program, and they've been sitting around for about 15 years now, and I finally got around to revising some of these things. So I'll just read one short one here. It's a piece of flash fiction. Does that look about right? It's called Playoffs. June had just finished the final chapter of In Love Again, wherein Myra finally accepted the fact that Jack had indeed overcome his roaring alcoholism after 2 long years of her attempts to save him from the self-destructive behavior that followed on the death of their 3-year-old illegitimate son in a tragic accident on her grandfather's farm, while Jack, who'd been left to watch him, was in the barn succumbing to the amorous advances of Myra's young cousin Ruthie from St. Louis. June looked up from this, her latest romance, then over at Roger in his recliner, wholly engrossed in some football game. "You're addicted," she said. Roger didn't hear her as he directed another string of curses at the TV and crushed his latest empty against his knee. There was less than a minute to go in the fourth quarter. He had $60 riding on a Denver win, and they were down by 2, 4th down, 6 yards to go. They just called their last time out, and now the station cut to a Budweiser commercial. Roger headed for the kitchen and another beer. June lit another Virginia Slim and glanced at the TV and the big green lizard there, explaining to his skeptical buddy that he had nothing against frogs. "I like frogs," he said, his tongue quivering with excitement. His companion shook his head. I don't know if you remember these ancient Budweiser commercials. This is an old story. It occurred to June that what these lizards were saying and not saying was way more significant than anything that was likely to happen in Roger's football game. That first lizard was an obvious addict. The duplicity in what he was saying clearly apparent. He was addicted to a self-imposed sense of victimization by the neighborhood frogs, and he was blind to the fact that though it was water-forward, crystal clear to his friend and to the viewer. But where was Roger and the other 1,000,000 or so men who watched these football extravaganzas? Off for beer or snacks or a long-awaited bathroom break. It was heart-rending. All those football addicts were also clearly addicted to commercial breaks. It was like some dark conspiracy, showing the very commercials that had the potential to enlighten and save them during the only breaks they had to feed their addictions. And the men were wholly unaware. It was obvious. If they were ever to face and overcome their addictions, it would be up to women, like June, to confront them. She nodded to herself. It was clear that she had to help Roger. She could hear him even now, going through the cupboards in the kitchen, looking for some salt fix to go with another beer. She put her book down, took a final drag on her Virginia Slim, and steered its remains down through the stack of butts in the ashtray to crush it out. "Roger," she thought, walking over to his chair, "we need to talk." She picked up the remote and turned off the TV. "Hey!" Roger yelled as he strode back into the living room with a bag of Fritos and 2 cans of Coors dangling from the rings of a plastic 6-pack holder. "Leave that on!" He yanked the remote away and flicked the set back on as he dropped into his recliner, then stripped a can from its plastic ring and popped the top. His timing perfect. The commercial's over and the camera panning the teams coming back onto the field. "All right, damn it. Now let's go." Of course, June thought as she walked back to the couch, it'll take some time, but it always does. She lit up another Virginia Slim and reached for the next book atop the stack she'd bought at the second page the day before. "Yeah!" Roger yelled. A long pass on the money had put Denver within field goal range. June shook her head. Poor Roger, totally oblivious over there in his recliner, coaching a television screen between munching Fritos and slurping beer. She turned to the blurbs on the back of "Oh, Henry, my love," and then, with a start, quick glanced at the clock. A few minutes before 5. It was fine. She still had an hour. Plenty of time to read a chapter or two, then reheat the leftover turkey for Roger before she left for bingo.
Poor Roger.
Well, I got a couple of things here that are in a book I'm passing around right now. A couple of poems here. The first one is called An Evolution of History. What feral synapse in the age of stone wedded the latent desire to the means of beginning the tragic and triumphant record of human endeavor? Genesis, an animated utterance, or some odd scratching in a pit of ash. Apocalypse, the final revelation. Fire thou art, and unto fire shalt thou return. In time, the epic became its own idol. Self-proclaimed shepherds gather meek sheep as the merely myopic hearken to the blind. Lords of war rise, princes of peace. And through it all, the hermits of God commit themselves to adoration, while the irreverent curse and carry on, God damning everything around them. And all of it alive in each of us, everywhere and always, here, now. And this one, instead of evolution, is devolution. Dreaming is now the common fate. Human awareness under assault from myriad channels of illusion. Hour to hour volleys of new, improved products promising a better you. Shorter surgeries, longer acting drugs, a wealth of quick fixes already proven to fragment being into episodes of frenzied anxiety, then boredom. But rest assured of a painless existence, however shortened due to side effects. Your life wrapped in the great web, hanging in the shadow of an economy both bankrupt and booming. Business as usual, politicians proffering the impossible, each vying for that vacant office, returned Christ. While self-glorified zealots roar, ignorantly seeking to devour the few among us who still believe in a God incarnate in us all. Yeah, I'll lighten up here. I had a neighbor when I was growing up. We called him Babe. He only stood about so high, and his wife was the same size. And Babe and Claire. And they worked down at the Norfolk Livestock Market. Later on, years later, I worked there myself. So I used to mow for Babe. He had some trouble with his feet. That all comes out here. I don't think there's anything else in here I need to... It's called Lawn Care with Babe. The neighbor's name was Harold, but folks called him Babe because I was already over 5 feet tall, and neither he nor Clara was.
Pizza for James?
After long days at the sale barn, like most of that dusty crew, he'd head for Jake's to wait for the wife and have a drink or two. Summer days after work, you'd find him lying with his tools in the yard. One hand tipping an old Milwaukee, the other brandishing a dandelion prod. He'd cut strategic holes in his shoes to ease a bad case of gout. and when he asked if I'd help mow his yard, I agreed to help him out. I was underage, but Babe liked his beer, so every time I'd mow, he'd bring out a couple of old Milwaukees. And what kid's gonna say no? Late that summer, his doctor told him it was time to draw the line. He'd have to quit the beer. If he needed, he could have a small glass of wine. Next time I mowed, Babe apologized. "I can't offer you a beer this time." Doc shut me off. He said, then added, "But I got some real good wine." He led the way inside and didn't bother to ask if I wanted any. Just poured us each an 8-ounce glass of Mad Dog 2020. My brother-in-law's Uncle Don, actually he's the guy that gave me my last Draghar. He raised him for a while. Actually, the last 2 Draghars I had came out of his male, I guess. We used to go down the Platte River. My sister and brother-in-law lived down at Elm Creek, Nebraska, and the Platte River runs through right south of there. They lived actually south of that yet, south of the river, on a place. But his uncle was down there working for quite a while and driving truck and things. And this was just one of the adventures we had with this guy. We used to do some things together down there. Uncle Don, 40-something and ankle-deep in coarse Platte River gravel, he plows upstream in search of a hole deep enough to harbor fish. My brother-in-law and I follow his shirtless uncle upstream, that pale skin a simmering beacon in the July sun. In boxer shorts and western boots, he kneels in a pool below a beaver den, says, "Grab my feet," and ducks under, clawing half out of sight beneath the bank. We each grab a boot, and when he gives a kick, haul back hard, and up he pops, a 2-pound carp in either hand. "Get these on a stringer," he gasps. "There's more." And down he goes again. We grip his acmes, await another jerk, then fish him out a second time, a 5-pound catfish clamped to his thumb. "Fire up the grill," he sputters. "We're eating fish tonight." This is you went to Norfolk High. Was Keith Bond teaching when you were there? Teaching history? Well, you might recognize. Keith Bond was a history teacher there, and he wasn't real tall, but he was solid. And he'd been a Golden Gloves boxer. That comes up in here. History lesson. "Bond's good," my brother said when I asked who he'd recommend for a history class in high school. "Just make sure you don't ever piss him off." Mr. Bond was a solid 5'8" and near 200 pounds, a former Golden Gloves champ and present regular down at the Mint. He was warm as toast that first week, just a little rosy about the cheeks, possibly a case of razor burn. But then a few students pushed the envelope. One bright morning in the second week, he entered with his usual stack of books, then paused for a moment at the door when the noise in the classroom just kept on. He ambled over to his desk at the front, then slammed those books down so damned hard the whole room shook into silent terror. 24 wide-eyed students staring at a face so suddenly livid it seemed it might be the barrel-chested devil himself beginning a lesson on impending doom in an eerily quiet and measured voice. This one's just called February 1977. I was 4 months out of the Army and bent on drinking up my unemployment. Since mid-October through January, they hadn't found available work for me. Construction laborer come infantryman. Then it warmed up and they called me in. Said a crew putting up a new department store could use a block layer's assistant. So I signed on and proceeded to haul the block and mud to that damned east wall. By the end of the first day, it was clear how much that block layer liked his beer. Every hour or two required a trip to town. I'm surprised the whole building ain't come down. Well, some of you have heard this before. I've got this, I mentioned earlier, Don Altwine raised Drahthaars, that's German wire-haired pointers. And I've had 3 of them. The first one actually was given to me by the vet in Kearney, who was a second cousin of mine. And I didn't really want a dog because I just got out of the Army and didn't really think I was ready for that. Well, I didn't even know. But this little dog got sick. I called her Gypsy because she was found out on the highways. And she got sick with parvo that was starting out back then. And she survived it. Just pretty amazing for just this little pup. And we spent 17 years after that together. And she was the first one, and I remember hunting with Don. And before that, he'd always used the short hairs. And after that, I'm not sure that she was the thing that kicked it in, but after he went hunting with her one time, he was a Drahthaar man after that. And he gave me this last Drahthaar, this Happy Dog that I have now. And she was supposed to be his son. It came out of his son's dog, these pups. And it was supposed to be Don's dog, but he was getting old, he had emphysema, and he said it would be an injustice to take that dog. He said, "Do you want it?" And at that time, my second Drahthaar, Smokey, was about 15 already, and I said, "Yeah, I'd take her if you're sure." And so I got this dog. And I called her the Happy Dog because, I don't know, she just is. This is called The Happy Dog Horks Down a Whole Damn Chicken. Each year my friend Ken heads up to the Hutterite colony in South Dakota to buy dressed chickens for himself and others. And he calls me up last June and asks if I want some. And I say, "Sure, I'll take 5 for myself and a couple for friends." So, with 7 chickens on the way, I go downstairs to check the freezer. And damn, I still got 3 from last year I must have forgot about. So I take one out, head back upstairs and put it in the sink to thaw while I go to the store for barbecue sauce. And I'm gone 20 minutes at most, but when I get back, there's nothing in the sink. So I look around, and sure enough, there's the plastic wrap the Hutterites use and one thumbnail-sized bit of bone on a chicken-sized wet spot on the couch, and that's all that's left of a 4-pound bird. I call for the Happy Dog, who it seems has wisely slinked away somewhere, and when she comes in, I can see right off she's swelled up fat as a full-blown tick. So, worried she might up and croak, I load her in the car and head for the country, thinking a run might do her some good, and it does, I guess, 'cause after a couple miles and several healthy deposits, she seems okay, and we head back. I open the car door and she jumps in, then onto the back seat just in time to chuck up what remains of that chicken on the floor of my Mercury. After a robust round of cursing and thanks to gas stop eateries for napkins of various pedigrees stowed here and there in the car, I start cleaning. 'Cause I've had dogs enough to know if I don't, what's left of that chicken's gonna get recycled and we can start the whole process over. So I get it done and once again load the happy dog, who shrunk some now, almost back to her fit and trim self. And a couple of proverbs come to mind. All's well that ends well, and happy is as happy does. But a whole damn chicken, Jesus. It ain't like I don't feed her. What the hell's she thinking? Are we about out of time here? One more? See if I can find one here. There was a contest some years back. They have these. There's a name for it too. You got a work of art. Is it ekphrastic? Is that what it's called? Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever seen this thing. I saw it once. Just a picture of it online, but. Deborah Butterfield has a sculpture called Derby Horse. Anybody know that sculpture? It's a metallic sculpture of a horse and its skeleton. I mean, it's just, you just look at it as an ancient skeletal. It's very powerful. So I wrote this poem, Derby Horse, after Deborah Butterfield's sculpture. Elemental color, monumental sheen, metallic link in a species progression along a chain of 3- and 4-toed shadows forged in the fires of the Eocene from the unalloyed bones of the early ones. Hyracotherium, Orohippus, Mesohippus, Merychippus, Calippus, Pleohippus, Pseudohipparion, Hipparion, Neo-Hipparion. Your names ring down the millennia as the rumble of your odd and countless hooves, the beating of your wild and ancient hearts echo in this metal cage of ribs, and your race against the night goes on. Woo! Thank you.